This week we're going to be talking about strategic training and thinking about what approach a business should take when developing a training and development program. What do they need to consider before actually creating and installing that within their company? Number one is, what approach do they want to take? What role do they want training and development to play? How will the training and development program affect their day-to-day operations? How will it affect their success? And they also want to make sure that it does align with their strategy and goals. That way what is being taught in these training and development programs actually benefits the company, and it should be what training and development is based upon. The process of creating a training and development program starts with analyzing the business strategy, which includes the company's mission, values, goals. Once we clearly know those, then we can begin to develop our training program. And when we think about it, that business strategy is going to influence what we do. It should dictate the type of training and development that we have. It should help determine how much time we're going to spend on training and how we're going to devote that. Are we going to spend it working on or training people at their current positions? Do we want to spend it on future jobs? Do we want to spend it on company-wide issues such as sexual harassment and those type of things? So that business strategy will help dictate that. Next, the company will determine what initiatives they want to take in order to reach these goals and align with their business strategy. The book does a really good job of giving you some examples and some of the implications from that. Obviously, each company is going to be different and take a different approach and have different initiatives, and this really can have an enormous impact on the success of a training and development program. It's something that really needs to be thought about, and they need to make sure those initiatives align with their business strategy. Once we know what those initiatives are, we need to actually come up with the activities and determine how we plan on delivering that. Is it going to be a face-to-face? Is it going to be web-based training? Are we going to make it mandatory, or is it going to be optional? Do we have websites that have knowledge and information available? And what are we trying to get out of it? We use the example here of customer service, and that's a theme you'll see throughout this book, the value placed on providing training for customer service. I always think it's interesting how, if you talk to any business, they always say their customers are the most important and they strive to have excellent customer service. But I'm sure we could all give numerous examples of times we've gone out to eat, we've gone to a grocery store, we've gone to a department store and gotten horrible customer service. And I always wonder, what happened? How come these people did not give excellent customer service? Was it on the person? Was it on the training? Was it a combination? I always find that interesting. As I talked about last week with Chick-fil-A and how their customer service is outstanding, but they spend a great deal of time actually working on customer service and ensuring that every customer that comes in there gets treated in a professional manner. Once we've realized our strategy, we've aligned initiatives to those strategies and actually created the different activities we would like to use for our training and development program, we need to actually make sure that the training is valuable and providing a service. So what we have to do is create some type of metrics or some way of actually determining whether or not our program is valuable to the company and actually making a difference in training employees. And there are different ways we can do that. And there are a couple different perspectives we need to look at. Number one, we need to look at the company's perspective and determine whether or not this is effective for the company. Is this money well spent? But we also need to look at it from an employee's perspective and whether or not they believe it's beneficial. And if it's not, what changes need to be made? I think a lot of times companies don't always take their employees into account, into consideration when developing programs, and oftentimes you end up with a training program that isn't very effective, that employees don't use and don't enjoy using, and that really hurts its effectiveness. So companies need to create different metrics to measure whether or not the program is successful and actually teaches skills, but also what is the impact on employees, and do they believe that they benefited from these programs. Now that we have a process in place, we need to look at some of the characteristics of an organization that could influence training. Now, obviously, each organization is different and has different characteristics, and they have different impact on the training and development program. But here's some overall issues that companies may come across, starting off with the role of managers and employees and whether or not they actually buy into the process, and what is their actual role within the company, and what is their perception of training and development. Do employees believe it's beneficial? Do managers believe it's beneficial? And this falls over into the top management, and oftentimes starts there. If your top management support training and development and back it and believe it's beneficial, more than likely your managers below and employees will. I waited tables throughout my college career and on and off, probably for 5-10 years, and you could usually tell whether or not a restaurant was successful or unsuccessful by their training program and how much time they actually spent and devoted to the training program. I know for the longest time, Outback always had a really good training program. It took time to ensure that their servers were ready before they would put them out on the floor, whereas went to other restaurants where they were really quick to throw you out on the floor because they didn't want to spend the time and the money training you. And those restaurants usually didn't do as well and had a higher turnover rate because their servers weren't trained and prepared when it was actually their turn to go out and serve. And also that's going to impact your customer service. If you have people that aren't trained and aren't prepared, they're going to struggle. And when that's representing your company, you need to be careful who you're actually putting out there. You also have to look at the integration of business units. Are we going to have a training program that crosses multiple units? Is it going to be just for that specific unit? And how does that impact the amount of money we spend on that and how much time we're willing to allocate it? Same with the global presence. Are we going to create a program that's worldwide? Is it going to be focused in a certain area or focused on certain demographics? Same way with the business conditions. This plays a role. When economic times are bad, how is that going to impact a training and development program? Are companies still going to be willing to invest money in a training and development program when they're not making the same money, they're not making the same return that they were when the market is good? And that is a interesting issue, whether or not companies should actually increase their training and development during those times, or whether or not they should cut back. Then you also have some human resource practices, and how does HR impact training and development? You also have the extent of unionization, which I always think is an interesting issue, and it has always been a hot topic whether unions are good or bad for companies and for America as a whole. I had the opportunity to work in a union plant, and it's certainly a different animal, and whether or not you agree or disagree with it, there are benefits for employees, and there are also some negatives. Obviously, at the plant I worked at, a lot of the people there could easily become lazy and not put forth their best effort and knew that they were covered by the union. But at the same time, it gave employees some power and allowed them to get better pay, better health care coverage. So there's definitely some benefits and negatives with that. It does have an impact on training and development and what type of training programs we use and how we actually implement them. Then finally, just staff involvement in training and development. Who's going to be involved in this? How are they going to be involved? And that can also impact your program. There are different models available for organizations to use when developing their own training and development program. One option is to have a centralized training program where everything is housed in one location and you have one team of trainers that design the curriculum and actually do the training, which is really good because it is uniform. Everybody gets the same level of training and development. You can also monitor success better. You can monitor how well that program is going, and it does tie into the business strategy a little easier. It makes it easier for training to align with that because you know exactly what's being done and you can monitor it and ensure that it aligns with the strategies of the business. Now, this isn't always possible, and sometimes there are other issues that make that not such a great idea, depending on the size of your company and depending how much money you want to spend, having your employees go to these certain locations. Another option along those same lines is the corporate university model. And what this is, some companies actually have their own resorts, their own areas or hotels, almost like where everybody comes in for training, and it's almost it is a university for that corporation, and they have their trainers there, and everything is designed for you to do your learning in that space. And they talk about the idea that it's beneficial, among other things, because you get to interact with your peers within your company and share ideas with people at the same stage of their career as you are, and share those examples. And it can be very beneficial, but again, it can also be very expensive, as you have to get people to these locations, and you have to put them up in the and pay for their lodging as well as their food. So that becomes very ineffective cost-wise. And again, it's not something you're going to do for your entry-level employee. This is more for your top management and those people that have been with the company, and as we saw with Hamburger University, which is a great example of that model. Another option is the business embedded model, which is based on 5 different competencies, which include strategic direction, product design, structural versatility, product delivery, and accountability for results. Lastly, we are seeing a merging of these different models, a centralized training merged with a business embedded model to create a model that functions better for these specific companies. We'll wrap up this week's lecture with a couple other areas discussed in this book in regards to strategic training. Number 1, talking about the marketing of the training and also the creating a brand. When you think about a training and development program, it is a product within a company oftentimes, and it needs to be marketed. It needs almost its own brand in order to be effective, and that happens when you have a product that is effective and that you can sell to managers and top management and get them on board because it is effective. And you need to be able to do that in order for it to truly be effective. If people don't see the value in it, they're not as likely to take an interest in it or spend their time doing that. So oftentimes what they do is they create a brand. They create a brand behind their training program, and this helps drive their marketing strategy and showcases what value the training and development brings to the company. The other topic I want to talk about is the idea of outsourcing your entire training and development program. And it's something that we've seen because of cost, and because sometimes it can be easier to simply outsource everything, and they can create all the tutorials you need, send it to say instructional designers or experts in those areas, and they will create whatever you want them to create. The problem with this is it's going to be a little more generalized, and it's not going to be maybe quite as specific to your company for a couple of reasons. Number 1, they don't have the knowledge of your company. And number 2, they don't have access to the same resources that company does. And oftentimes that's because if you're a company, you're not going to want to share some of your secrets with this training or outsourcing company. So you're going to be a little reluctant to include maybe some of the key business strategies that separate your companies from the others. So outsourcing is a good idea, and it can be more cost effective, but at the same time they're going to get a more generalized program that may not be quite as effective, but it is still a possibility. I think this has been an interesting week looking at how businesses actually come up with these training and development programs, and for your assignment you'll get the opportunity to look at a business strategy and think about how you would create a training and development program for that. Now, you're not going to create one, but you're going to start to think about what, when you look at a business and you look at their strategy, how would you create a training and development program that aligns with what they are doing, ensuring that they are successful in actually training and retaining employees.